generation unit, Mr. Bheki Nxumalo, and I still have. I think that it appears that perhaps maybe he has not been given free rein to the extent required, and that the leadership that's supposed to be provided by both the board and the group CEO is also not there. Because when you look at the distribution side of the business of Eskom, they had throughout the last 300 plus days continued to implement load reduction measures. And the load reduction measures are as a result of the neglect, I dare say, on the distribution side. I think the last time we spoke, I made mention that there was nothing racist about load reduction. It just simply meant that it was poor planning, in that they just, again, seem to be caught by surprise by the demand in certain areas and then end up resorting to load reduction. But now for them to say, we learned something new as a result of this 10 units tripping, that we should perhaps pay particular attention to the auxiliary power equipment, they should have gone further to assure us that they indeed have got a handle of the situation, in as far as stating of the current units that are operating. Remember, they were wax lyrical that they had 62% energy availability factor. That is energy potential they could now at 62% energy availability factor, juxtaposed with the current demand in the country. There is absolutely no way there should be load shedding, and hence people like myself have gone and asserted that for the next 5 years there will be no load shedding again.
You certainly have
because
said that,
we believe. Yeah, because we believed, and there was no reason for us not to believe, when they said that they had now maintained a 62% energy availability factor. And in terms of their energy generation recovery plan, they were well on track to eventually get to the optimal, the desired 72 to 75% energy availability factor. Because with the current installed capacity of Eskom, at 75% energy availability factor, it then gives Eskom the, really to be able to assure all those who are seeking to invest in this economy that there will be reliable supply of power or of electricity. And I think we've spoken before that all the so-called 4IR economies are energy intensive by nature.
Yeah.
Now, as much as we want to have other energy intensive user industries such as the steel making industry, therefore attempts being made to avert the closure of ArcelorMittal's plants as well as the ferrochrome smelter. But the 4IR economies, whether it's data centers, whether it's any of those, they are also energy or cryptocurrency mining. They are all energy intensive. Therefore, it is important for a Eskom to actually ensure that it can consistently operate at above 75% energy availability factor. Now, I now no longer believe the 62%, because I look at their plant is operating consistently around 44%. So I'm asking, well, if you are at 44% operating and your energy availability factor is at 62%, they shouldn't have, in any event, even the tripping of these 10 units, taking into account that they are operating at 44%.
So therefore, if I
never have been a stage 6.
So your initial claim then of we'll have no load shedding for 5 years, would you then retract that claim based upon what you now know?
I'm calling for competent management to be in place. I think I made an announcement yesterday that the most appropriate and welcome response was not a media briefing at 11 o'clock. Should have been the resignation of at least 3 of the people that were in that press media briefing yesterday.
But how would that have helped?
Because
wouldn't have that
stops with them.
But wouldn't a resignation simply create even a bigger crisis?
No, because it is evident now that we need people who are more in tune, whose management philosophy understand the key need of this country, the clear and present need for this country, and to keep the main thing. Right now, there's a misalignment. For example, they have just now formed a new unit at Eskom called Eskom Renewables, it is bizarre. It's an absurdity that they could even have gone now and established such a company. Secondly, they still continue, and this found expression in the State of the Nation address by the President, that they are going to build 14,000 kilometers of a transmission grid at the cost of, a colossal cost of 400 billion rand. In the current climate, and with the US President being Donald Trump, I can see how they will be able to raise monies from anywhere, from any banking institutions to finance that pet project of building 14,000 kilometers, because what they need to do is to spend money on the distribution, strengthen the distribution network. And because the current transmission grid, remember, it's got capacity now of 54 gigawatt or 54,000 megawatts. Whereas the current demand is only around 26,000 megawatts. So why on earth would anybody want to go and do that? The only thing I would welcome, of course, is the fact that the minister is saying that he's going to present a report to Cabinet, effectively taking on the long-standing advice I have given to Eskom that they needed to return to service the units that they had mothballed for well over 10 years now. And by returning those to service, they could then retrofit clean coal technologies with lower emissions but higher efficiencies, but at a cost of no more than 54 billion, but at least gain 15,000 megawatts of generation capacity than what they are currently doing, which is, it's just catastrophic.
So to wrap up, and you've got a minute to answer this, I mean, do you think, therefore, knowing what you now know, at least for the next few weeks, that we could have a greater frequency of load shedding? And importantly, you said some people should resign. Who should they be? Who are the names you're referring to? And you've got a minute to answer that.
The chairman of the board, the group CEO, and the minister. The minister has become a spokesperson for Eskom. He should not be, because at the end of the day, that portfolio, I've said from day one, it was never warranted. And here he's in position, and yet we still have got uncertainty in terms of security of supply of electricity. And when you look at the management decisions that have been taken by both the board as well as the group CEO, you can clearly see that we are headed for a disaster. Let the guy who runs the generation, let him do his job, and do his job without any constraints or unlawful interference.
Okay. Let's leave it at that. You've certainly got us thinking. Tsepo Kgadima, the independent economic and energy analyst, effectively saying the minister, the CEO, and the chairperson of Eskom all should step down ASAP. What do you make of that? Let's talk about Ukraine and Russia after this.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're a sealing and partition company. I like OUTsurance. They have that personal touch. In addition to the great service they give me, they've also saved me and my company 3,266 rand per month. Guys, make that call. It's well worth it.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Day 15. Location undisclosed. Mood brave. Music Eye of the Tiger. Dear Diary, it's been 2 weeks of epic challenges against some of the most memorable and epic Survivor contestants. I have endured some harsh weather conditions, unbelievable drama, and these fire tokens have given me and the other contestants a second chance to stay in the game. Food. I feast on the defeat of my enemies. Vumi over there is busy planning and scheming, thinking that he can get me off the island. Never mind though. I will win this and take home $2 million. We're gonna be rich, Papa.
Rich Kupiwana Bonani, are you doing that thing again? Come and get your dinner, Mr. Fake Diary Sessions. We're now on Survivor. Oh, the world will fall.
Catch Survivor Season 40, Winners at War. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Starts 27 February on S3. Open up.
S3.
V up your February with great value deals from Vodacom Business. Meet the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra featuring integrated Galaxy AI. Get it on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for only 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 69 Rand extra per month and get the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit cfi.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45, proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
I tell you what, that is such an interesting position from Tsepo Kgadima, calling on, and I don't know whether he's overreacting, saying the minister, the chairperson of the Eskom board, as well as the CEO should resign in the light of what's happened now. Don't you think that's a massive overreaction? Perhaps you think differently. 086 000 2032 to call in, or to WhatsApp 0614 104 107. It's 3 years now since the Russia-Ukraine war. So 3 years since Russia invaded the Ukraine. Where are we now with this war? There's been some significant changes, I would think, in the last few days since the inauguration of Donald Trump as the U.S. president once again. But where are we now with Dr. Andrei Kurtunov? Let's find out. He's the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. Dr. Kurtunov, thank you for connecting with us here on the National Pulse.
Welcome.
All right, so here's the big question. 3 years, what's going to happen next?
Well, first of all, I think that we can confess that both sides demonstrated remarkable resilience over the 3 years of this fratricidal, very bloody conflict. However, it seems that we are getting to a tipping point, and of course, the position of the new Republican administration in the United States might be one of the game changers. Hopefully, this year will be the last year, at least in terms of the fighting on the ground. Maybe we will not reach a comprehensive political arrangement, but if we're lucky, we might come to some kind of interim settlement which will involve not just Russia and Ukraine, but also broader issues of European security system.
Okay. Now, talking about some sort of settlement, I mean, the Ukraine leader, Zelensky, has made the point, and I'm quoting him, if you need me to leave, then I'm ready to do so, essentially saying for the interest of peace. But I can also exchange that. That means stepping down as the leader of the Ukraine for NATO membership of the Ukraine. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think that his position is clear, and definitely bringing Ukraine into NATO is the ultimate goal of the Ukrainian president. However, this goal can hardly be achieved in any foreseeable future, not only because Russia is emphatically against Ukraine joining NATO, but also because the NATO alliance itself is not united on this issue. And if you take, for instance, President Trump's position, he is clearly against such a membership. They can discuss alternative ways to provide for the Ukrainian security, but this is something that has to be discussed in specific details, because, of course, it is also a question about what security guarantees Russia will have. It is also concerned about an existential threat coming from NATO.
Well, therefore, often when we talk about, wars or battles, you talk about who's winning it. So, who's winning the literal war as we know it in terms of, land taken or lives lost on the other side versus who's winning the political battle?
Well, I think that it would be fair to say that right now Russia has the strategic initiative firmly in its hands. Ukraine did make some advances in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation, but these efforts turned out not to be very successful, and Russia is gradually, maybe not very fast, but gradually gaining ground in East Ukraine. So the question is at what point Ukraine might start imploding. And I think that though the margin of safety might be significant, it is not limitless. So Ukraine should be interested in a ceasefire as fast as possible.
And if they get that ceasefire, what happens next? Well, I'm saying that in the context of, how significant is the inauguration or the ascendancy to power of Donald Trump once again, and being very clear that he also blames the Ukraine for the war, something that I don't think any other Western leader has done for a long, long time?
Well, this is exactly what is happening right now, and of course it was quite a surprise to many leaders around the world. Trump tries to take a more balanced, what he believes to be a more comprehensive approach to the conflict, and of course he argues that Ukraine did a lot to provoke Russia in the very beginning of this conflict. But right now, I think that for Trump, the conflict is an opportunity to demonstrate that he can accomplish something that no one else could have accomplished before him. He can become a peacemaker, and that would be definitely a major, major foreign policy victory for the Trump administration.
Let's go back to what happened initially. You spoke about the Ukraine provoking the Russians, and therefore, from what has been commonly now explained, the Russians then invaded the Ukraine. Right? With hindsight, has the Russians then achieved some of the goals that they set out 3 years ago?
Well, I think that we can talk about Russia partially achieving the goals that it set for itself 3 years ago, because Russia wanted to make sure that Ukraine stays neutral, and the Ukrainian leadership still aspires to join NATO. Russia stated that it would like to see Ukraine demilitarized and denazified. And again, I think that a lot of the military hardware has been destroyed in course of the war, but Ukraine is still fighting. So the mission is not completely accomplished. However, definitely Russia is moving in this direction.
Okay, and lastly, quick answer. What's the next sign you'd like to be seeing happen immediately?
Well, I would like to see a Trump-Putin meeting and some kind of consensus on what can be done to stop the bloodshed.
Okay, let's leave it at that, and let's see whether that is really actually going to happen. Appreciate your time. 3 years into that war, Dr. Andrei Kurtunov, Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. Let's get the news headlines. It's 3:30.
For the headlines at 3:30, I'm Dino Modaum. Good afternoon. The Competition Commission wants Google to compensate South African news media between 300 million and 500 million rand annually over a 3 to 5 year period. The Commission has released the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry Provisional Report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. In other news, the Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Buti Manamela, says they are working with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme to ensure that all student accommodation debt is settled. And the court case against the 41-year-old Congolese national arrested in connection with the Zanzu Club assault in Pretoria has been postponed to next week Monday. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Santon Drive outbound has a fallen tree reported before Marie Avenue, and on the N1 northbound in Midrand, a crash between Olifantsfontein Road and Samrand Road causing heavy delays on traffic in both sides. In KZN, the N2 northbound queuing towards Westwood Mall and Umgeni Road westbound has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions at Alpine Road. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound queuing through Bishop's Court and the M5 southbound has a crash reported before Racecourse Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, let's connect and talk about the Champions Trophy. We know that Bangladesh are in action, but very importantly, you have news about South Africa.
Yes, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, the Proteas are sweating over the fitness of Heinrich Klaasen for the Champions Trophy Group B fixture against Australia tomorrow. Klaasen is busy recovering from an elbow injury, which made him miss the opener. South Africa cruised to a 107-run victory over Afghanistan in their opening match, and now will face an Australian outfit that successfully chased 352 with 15 balls to spare there to beat England by 5 wickets in their first game. On the other hand, the Aussies are without Pat Cummins, Josh Hazelwood and Mitchell Starc, but SA captain Themba Bavuma says that they will not take their injury-hit opponents very lightly. Meanwhile, Bangladesh posted 236 for 9 in their 50 overs. Earlier on, New Zealand won the toss and they chose to bowl first. That's the action that is currently on. Nushmal Hussain Shantu top scored with 77, with Michael Bracewell taking the most wickets at 4. And in terms of how New Zealand are currently doing, well, things are not looking well for them because they're currently sitting on 15 for 2 in the third over. And a win for New Zealand would also knock Bangladesh and host Pakistan out in the group phase of the 50-over tournament, and India would go through with the Black Caps. In football, Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture Gayton McKenzie says that the video assistant referee will be available at the end of April. Later last year, McKenzie promised to speed up the VAR process by attending a SAFA NEC meeting in Gqeberha, where he learned that this would always be a costly project. Now, he has committed to a date for the installation of the technology.
I made the promise to South Africa that VAR is coming. I said the end of April. Nothing has changed. We'll see. I see there's some teams that are worried about VAR. I'm not going to mention names here. The ones that love sport of soccer, they'll be happy for VAR. If you are a corrupt referee, your time is coming to an end. VAR will expose you, and we will prosecute the corrupt referees.
Talking about referees, Chippa United coach Thabo September feels that match officials in the PSL are regressing and not improving from their errors. The Chile Boys' mentor was reacting after their 1-0 defeat to Skukunya United at the Buffalo City Stadium yesterday. September and his technical team were visibly unhappy with referee Mokele Tulo throughout the Betway Premiership encounter. And according to September, the man in the middle made a few wrong calls.
I don't know what is punishment for talking about referees. I'll stick to this. I'm still new in this coaching thingy, but referee did his part. He played. He was. The worst thing is when you make a mistake and you don't acknowledge the mistake. But sometimes I make mistakes. I need to see the mistakes so that I don't repeat them. I think that's what's disappointing is when a referee doesn't want to acknowledge and communicate. Mistakes, they will always happen. Maybe sometimes it's deliberate or maybe not, but just acknowledge when. Don't force things as if you did something right. That was my only argument. Otherwise, the referee is human. He had a game, and it was a tough game. Yes, some decision we feel they might not be right, but we feel some decision should have gone our way. But at the end of the day, he's the middleman.
Well, still staying with football, South Africa's Benny McCarthy is reportedly set to arrive in Nairobi on Wednesday to take over as Kenya's men's national football team head coach. He's believed to have agreed terms in principle. And also, Munib Josephs is set to join McCarthy as the goalkeeper coach of the team. Now, McCarthy's first task will be the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifiers against Gambia on the 20th of March and the 23rd of March against Gabon. And moving on to tennis, then Argentina's Sebastian Baez successfully defended his ATP Rio Open clay court title with a straight sets win over Alexandre Müller of France in the final. The world number 31 came through 6-2 and 6-3 to secure his 7th career crown. And finally, in athletics, Athletics South Africa have decided to exclude a 10,000-meter event from the National Athletics Championships to give athletes a better chance to qualify for the World Championships in Tokyo later this year. The Grand Prix Continental Tour Challenger is set to kick off the domestic season on the 12th of March at Pilgridge Stadium. With that said, that's it from my side for now.
I'm just thinking about this. So if Benny McCarthy takes over the Kenyan team at some stage, if he survives long enough in the job, it could be Kenya versus South Africa, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I just wonder how do coaches who have an entire legacy with one country then oppose that country in a big game? Like, it's never happened to me, so I don't know how they would cope.
It'll be interesting, but I think it's a very interesting appointment, obviously it's yet to be fully confirmed, because obviously Kenya has been saying that they want to take big steps in reclaiming its stature in African football. They're also going to co-host AFCON in 2027. So getting someone like McCarthy to come in, someone who's coached Cape Town City, AmaZulu, and also was that Man U striker coach. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to help elevate the level of football there.
Well, it's a big challenge for him, and I think the obvious question most people will be asking is like, why is Benny McCarthy not really part of the South African inner circle? Maybe he talks too much. That's why. That's the answer. Perhaps. More sports in an hour.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned, and almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We in the eye care industry, we're saving over 1,200 rand a month. To all the business owners, you've got nothing to lose by giving OUTsurance a chance to quote on your business insurance. It's true to say that you always get something out with OUTsurance.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Defending WAFCON champions are tackling Mahaladi Idwe in another glittering international friendly. Both nations described their first match as the first half. Will Banyana Dr. Ellis dominate this 90 minutes, or will the beautiful flowers conquer the pitch battle? Witness the on-field grudge between Abu Makelwa and South Africa versus Lesotho on Tuesday, 25 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
I'll take your calls shortly, so look out for that coming up, and you can call in 086 000 2032. Whatever it is you want to get off your chest, you know that What For You moves the National Pulse today. WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. By the way, we'll chat to the mayor of the city of Joburg coming up after 4 o'clock. He said a few weeks ago his task is to fix this broken city. Okay, easier said than done. Let's find out how he does that. In the meantime, let's talk about small business. It's such an important issue. I think just about every day you hear economists talk about the fact that, the biggest employer in the country should be small businesses, entrepreneurs, and therefore we need to get that right, as opposed to, people looking for jobs within government circles, and government simply can't afford to hire them anyway, right? So you think, let's give that a thumbs up. But interestingly enough, Anne Bernstein, the executive director of the Center for Development and Enterprise, has a slightly different view, not about the end goal, but in terms of the how. And she believes the Department of Small Business and Development needs to be shut down. Why ever for? Let's find out. And good chatting to you, and thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good to be with you, Ashraf, and your listeners.
Much appreciated. Right. So you want the Department of Small Business to be shut down at a time when most people are suggesting that we need to emphasize the importance of small business, and therefore a department does just that. Tell me why.
Look, we believe we need a much more vibrant and dynamic small business sector. So the issue isn't the goal, but South Africa's been saying the same thing for the last 10 years. We say we want a bigger small business sector and we must do more, and there's talk. If you look at it, since the department was set up in 2014, it has not achieved very much at all. We spend about 6 billion rand a year by the state on promoting small business. And it's hard to see the numbers. The government itself says that the sector is small and stagnant, that there are low survival rates, and that there's been ineffective support to small enterprises. And we're saying, let's do something different. Let's take half of what government spends over 3 years, call it 9 billion rand, and let's, in a very competitive, transparent way, let's say to the private sector, what would you do with this money? You go and use this money. After all, what makes us think that officials who through no fault of their own have no experience or little experience in running small businesses or identifying those that could, make a go of it, or how to support them or how to finance them? What makes us think that the state would be better than the private sector at this? So let's give it to the best people we can find in our society, the private actors. Let's push them to do more for small business because they'll want the money. It's a lot of money. And then let's make our focus on small business much more transparent.
Okay.
We don't know how government spends its money. We can't find this in any reports. It's not good enough to say, oh, we supported 100 businesses. That's not the issue. The issue is, did they grow? How many are alive next year? Are they employing more people? But we never get that information. So let's make the whole area much more transparent. Let's force people, private sector, public sector, spending our money to show us every year in public what they did. You don't get A for effort. We want to know results.
So I hear what you're saying. So why can't...
much better ways of supporting small businesses that have a chance of becoming bigger.
All right. So, a couple of things. One, you're saying there is no measurement at this point in time. If I asked you how many small businesses were there 10 years ago and you gave me a number, are you able to tell me that? And if I told you how many are there now? And then very importantly, if I said, what's the level of profitability and growth with those small businesses over the 10-year period? Are you saying not only you can't tell me, but nobody can tell me? Is that correct?
First, the information you're asking for is very foggy. We can't rely on a lot of it. So we can give you a few numbers. By some calculations, the sector as a whole expanded at 1.6% per annum from 2010 to 2019, but then it was devastated by COVID. So we don't really know. But Ashraf, there's another important point, which we don't want. The issue isn't how many small businesses we have. The issue is how many small firms start up and become bigger businesses. So we need a much more dynamic economy. In fact, the World Bank would say countries with lots and lots and lots of very small businesses are much poorer than countries with lots of small firms that become medium firms that become larger firms. So we need to be careful how we think about this.
Okay. And do you have an answer on that? Even your own point that, how many small businesses, new small businesses of 10 years ago have now become big businesses in South Africa?
No, we don't have those numbers at all as a country. We don't know. We don't know how government spends its money. We don't know how they select people, which firms. We don't know anything, really.
Now, what did the figure? What did you say initially? How much is spent on
well,
small business?
We did research in 2018 to 2021. We sent a very respected research firm, and we said, "Tell us how much money is spent on the small business sector by the state." They came back and said, "Sure, this is a black box, but our best estimate, and it's probably an underestimate, is just below 6 billion a year. A year. 6 billion is a lot of money.
6 billion South African rands a year is spent annually.
Your and my tax money by the government.
So do we know where that money is spent? In which aspect of small? Is it in training? Is it in marketing? Is it in brand expertise?
There are over 300 agencies that are helping small business. We found 28 agencies that help with funding. But, so we don't know. It ranges from agriculture, they help some small farms, to the department might help a few sort of enterprises. It's all over the place, and we're not seeing results for 6 billion rand per annum in the numbers.
Well, it certainly is. So if we remove, and of course it's your wish list at this point in time, right? If you remove the small business ministry, right, which ministry then takes on that responsibility?
Yes. That's an important question. So we're saying the second important proposal we're making is about deregulation. So I'll come to that because it really matters for small businesses. And, everyone talks about red tape and deregulation, but we never seem to make any progress. So we have a very specific set of recommendations around that, from labour laws to how to do it in the presidency. And again, we're saying, this isn't a black box. Tell us every year. What regulations have you got rid of? Have you applied the SME test, which the OECD uses, where you look at every piece of legislation and think, how does this affect a small firm of 15 people? Is it a good idea or is it crazy? But tell us what's happened. So we need to do that in the presidency and do it properly and report transparently every year. Any other function should be merged with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition because we shouldn't think of small businesses separately from the economy as a whole. They are different. They're much smaller. But, all firms start small. Discovery started small. You wanted to get bigger. So it's part of the economy. So some of the major things that will help small businesses are actually things that will help all businesses.
Well, it's an interesting point.
Logistics, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera.
It's an interesting point. I think just a few days ago I asked a question about, why are spaza shops called spaza shops? I mean, you don't have to answer that, but it's just a point about, in terms of, therefore, the branding and the attitude around it. So your point about small business and big businesses is well taken. So the last thing now before we wrap up here, one is you speaking about, the private sector getting involved. How do you anticipate that they should get involved?
In the following way. Say the government agreed to our proposal, 9 billion over 3 years for the private sector. You set up a committee of the right people who know about these things, and you say, right, we're calling for proposals. We're going to allocate this 9 billion to 3 or 5 entities. You need to persuade us, banks, venture capital firms, some of the successful entities helping small business in the private sector. Give us proposals. Here are our criteria. What are you going to do for the country? How are you going to assess your achievements? How are you going to audit all of this properly? So you have a competition with clear criteria. And then you decide, okay, it's this venture capital firm, it's this NGO, it's this other firm, whatever, the SME fund, this bank. And you give it to them and you say, we're giving you a certain amount, we want to see delivery, and we want a transparent report that ordinary people like you and me can understand next year on how you've done.
Okay.
And then we're going to compare that with how the public sector spends money.
Okay, here's the last thing. Just one answer, one word answer. Is there a country ideally on the African continent that best resembles the model that you've been speaking about?
I don't really think that Africa is the right place to look. I think that there are different aspects of this. India deregulated a lot in the early 1990s and had phenomenal results. They didn't do enough, but they did well.
All right. Can we leave it at that? We need to leave it at that.
Sure.
Anne Bernstein, thank you. So India, not Africa for now. This is the National Pulse.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
SAFM would like to thank everyone that submitted their entries for the playwriting competition. The announcement of the top 10 and winners of the competition will be announced on the 3rd of March 2025 on The Talking Point with Kathy Mutlatlana. Stay tuned to SAFM and find out who is the lucky winner. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Predictably, you're going to have comments. What do you think about Anne Bernstein's proposal of scrapping the small business ministry and replacing that with private business, private sector getting involved in that, because there's just no measurement in terms of small business. But there's many other things. The electricity, the minister should step down. The chairperson of the Eskom board should step down. The CEO should step down. That's according to the guest we had earlier on, Tsepo Khadima. Let's get your thoughts.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I thought Dr. Hossein Soramokhupa, the Minister of Electricity, I thought he knew what he was doing, but I was wrong. He knows nothing. And I think Malema was right when he said that the only thing that he knows is to speak English. Thank you very much, Peter Maila Machaba from Letswata.
Oh, goodness, Peter. Noted your point, right? There's also comment about the conversation we had regarding Ukraine and Russia.
Hello, Ashraf. It's Tammy Islander. Ashraf, I feel sorry for Zelensky. He was warned by Putin that these Europeans are going to use him and dump him. Now he has no other alternative but to resign as a president. And his people are going to go after him. He might go to prison for all these lives that have been lost under his watch.
Listen, these global fights, we just don't understand them, do we?
Hey, Ashraf, good afternoon. This is Fergus. It's interesting for me to listen and read back in history as to what happened with Neville Chamberlain and Hitler prior to the start of the Second World War. Neville Chamberlain visited Berlin, had Hitler, and commented on what a nice person he was, and that he was confident that Hitler wouldn't carry on with invasions. What he actually achieved was giving Hitler the confidence that he could go ahead. So a few weeks later, if I'm not mistaken, he invaded Poland, and the rest is history. What do you think of the parallel between Chamberlain and Donald Trump? I think Donald Trump doesn't read history, and I think the worry is that we've got history repeating itself.
Well, it's an interesting point that you raise about Donald Trump. But I mean, the problem with Donald Trump, it's not just about what's happened with Ukraine. He together with his partner, Elon Musk, have taken it upon himself to pronounce policy on like 10 hotspots, sometimes geopolitical, sometimes economic in the world. And they're doing that like once a day. And you wonder, isn't it? And I also wonder. So points noted, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Mark Parashiazo from Tembo. These things that Zelensky will step down only if his country joins NATO is nonsensical. Because whoever replaces him as the president will still be influenced by NATO, and that will still pose a very serious threat to Russia, so that the war will still continue. That is the problem here. That's why Trump was trying to sideline them in peace negotiation, because they are the problem there. They started this conflict.
And there's more on that issue. Listen, they always wanted to be part of NATO, so they got that support. That's what the Russians don't want. So to step down, provided they get into NATO, it's like a complete contradiction in itself, isn't it?
Hi, Ashraf. Errol here from Durban. It took Donald Trump, who's often been criticized and whatever, it took him to play a large part in stopping the war in Gaza. I mean, this is something that even the United Nations and their so-called peacekeeping forces couldn't do. So, yeah, it took the controversial Donald Trump to end the war there. And let's hope he can end the war in Russia too. Errol, Durban.
Thanks for that, Errol. You see, the problem with that, with the Gaza one, it could be temporary, because in ending the actual combat for now, in the same language is like saying we're going to shift all these people to another country, and we're going to do it like we've decided arbitrarily. Now that's a no-no, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is from Bloemfontein. I agree with Lieutenant General Mapaha that the SNDF has been turned into a mockery. And I'm shocked about the response of Dakota Lochwete. He's a politician. He's the one that, he and his comrades are the one that are causing SNDF to be like this. Really.
Tell you what, we're going to have a conversation about the SANDF and what was said. We'll do that later on in the show. Listen out for that, okay? Including chatting to the mayor of the city of Joburg. That comes up just after 4 o'clock. Do not miss that.
Good afternoon, Asha. Can you please help with SASSA challenge? My brother has not got his grant, old age grant, for January and February. We are having a problem where the money is being drawn, but the SASSA people say that it's fraud. They don't know who's doing that. We are in and out of their offices to no assistance. Please assist. We are actually visiting the Eastern Mall Post Bank. Give us the contact number of officials at SASSA at Post Bank office or SASSA, please, Asha.
All right, let me just do this. Let me get Temba and Keith just to follow up on your story and see if they can assist you in some way or the other. I think that needs to happen, right? By the way, talking about assist, we raised the issue of starting some, national fundraiser of sorts away from NSFAS. And I know people have dropped us an email. So if you've got some really solid ideas, just drop an email to studio@sfm.co.za. So hopefully we can bring it all together and see if we can come up with a solution and get some people who are significantly involved in understanding it to grow that thing big time, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the team. It's Andrew from Butterworth. Ashraf, how far are we with that Smolanyana project of ours? That contributions of about 10 rand per person towards the education of university kids. How far are we? Some of us are really taken into it.
Oh, it's interesting. I actually said it before you even played your sound. So as you know, I think we spoke about it Thursday, then there was Friday. These things, they we need to look into see what are the solid ideas. And then, before you even fundraise, you need to actually appoint a board to control that. So let us look into that in this week and then come up with some potential answers. It can't just be done in one day. It sounds easy, but it is not. Okay, it's certainly not easy to be the mayor of the city of Joburg. I have no doubt about that. I don't want to be the mayor. I don't have any desire to be. Dada Morero is the mayor, and he says that he needs to, I'm quoting him, my task is to fix a broken city. We're going to find out how is he going about doing the job from around 8 minutes past 4. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Dineo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. Competition Commission hits Google with a 500 million rand demand, and European leaders pledge support for Ukraine. A very good afternoon. The Competition Commission wants Google to compensate South African news media between 300 million and 500 million rand annually over a 3 to 5 year period. The Commission has released the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry Provisional Report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. It's found that Google enjoys a monopoly and unequal bargaining position of the media in South Africa. The report says that there's not been an equitable share of value between Google and news publishers in the country, both historically and currently, affecting advertising and revenues. The chairperson of the inquiry is James Hodge.
What has happened is that people are going through search or social media intermediaries, now AI chatbots, to get their news and not landing onto the media's own website or watching the SABC in the evening news, rather looking at it on YouTube. And that means the money's flowing towards the platforms, the search social media platforms, and not towards the media. And that puts the media in a position where it's unable to be financially sustainable. And that has serious consequences for our democracy.
In other news, Wits University has extended the registration deadline to close of business tomorrow. This follows a meeting between the university's management and the Students' Representative Council. According to the university, it was agreed that they'll consider the registration of academically deserving undergraduate students with an outstanding debt of less than 150,000 rand. Wits spokesperson Shirona Patel.
Students who have debt of less than 150,000 rand are allowed to register, provided that they get assistance from both the WITS Hardship Fund and the SRC's Legacy Fund. Now, the Hardship Fund is worth 28 million rand, and basically it helps students to register and to find emergency accommodation. We also fundraised an extra 11 million rand with the SRC last year to accommodate all these students who will now be allowed to register. The second is the SRC Fund. Whatever the SRC fund raises, we match that as a university by getting other donors to come on board.
Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training Buti Manamela says they are working with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS to ensure that all student accommodation debt is settled. Speaking at FITS, he urged private accommodation providers not to prejudice any students whose accommodation has not been paid by NSFAS.
I had a long meeting yesterday with the senior management at NSFAS and to get certain commitments from them, and some of those commitments includes ensuring that we mop up the debt that is owed to private accommodation providers so that we start on a clean slate. They have indicated to me that they have started with payment for most of those beginning of this year.
Some court news now. The court case against the 41-year-old Congolese national arrested in connection with the Zanzi club assault in Pretoria has been postponed to next week, Monday. The man was apprehended in Yeoville last week when Johannesburg Metro Police officers conducted patrols in the area. This after a video depicting young men in their 20s being sexually violated at the club went viral over recent weeks. NPA spokesperson Lumka Mahanjana says the suspect will remain in police custody until his next appearance at the Pretoria High Magistrates Court.
This matter today was postponed to the 3rd of March for bail information. So basically what that means is that the state, we still need to do an identity parade of some of the victims that still need to identify the accused. And number 2, the state also needs to verify the documents that he handed in court to verify whether indeed he is legal in the country.
Lastly, on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, a large number of Ukraine's allies have been reaffirming their solidarity and announcing further concrete support. Many of those at a summit in Kiev have been pushing back against U.S. President Donald Trump's unilateral decision to pursue direct peace talks with Moscow. They insist that Ukraine and Europe must be involved to ensure any settlement is durable and fair. The head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
The war in Ukraine remains the most central and consequential crisis for Europe's future. Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation, and we know what could happen next, because it has already happened before. It is not only the destiny of Ukraine that is at stake, it is Europe's destiny that is at stake.
Recapping the top story at 4, the Competition Commission wants Google to compensate South African news media between 300 million and 500 million rand annually over a 3 to 5 year period. The Commission has released the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry Provisional Report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. For SFM News, I'm Dino Motaung. Headlines at 4:30.
In your sports this hour, Blitzbok coach Snyman satisfied with silver in Vancouver, and Magagula calls for clinical Banyana and a final Lesotho friendly. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Sandton Drive outbound has a fallen tree reported before Marine Avenue, and the N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash reported between Olifantsfontein Road and Samrand Road, leading to heavy traffic on both routes. In KZN, the N2 northbound queuing towards Westwood Mall and traffic lights not working at the M7 St. John's Avenue and the M13 highway in Pinetown. In Cape Town, on the N2 inbound, a fault fire with smoke affecting visibility towards Muway reported, and the M3 southbound queuing towards Rhodes Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Defending WAFCON champions are tackling Mehaladitwe in another glittering international friendly. Both nations describe their first match as the first half. Will Banyana Dr. Ellis dominate this 90 minutes, or will the beautiful flowers conquer the pitch battle? Witness the on-field grudge between Abu Makelwa, South Africa versus Lesotho on Tuesday, 25 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, lots of comments on the conversation I had regarding the Ukraine and Russia, on the South African National Defence Force, and then on the back of the conversation I had with Anne Bernstein about her call for scrapping the entire Department of Small Business. I wonder what you make of that, because that, I think, to a large degree speaks to the heart of so many businesses that maybe people like yourself and myself are involved in, right? Suggesting that all small businesses can become big, so don't call them small anyway, right? What do you make of that? Have you had a personal story about how your small business grew massively so, right? I'd like to know, right? To call in 0614 104 107, that's on voice note, WhatsApp, so text or voice note, and then to call in live 086 000 2032. You also have the option of tweeting on the X platform, tag SFM Radio, and tag me, Ashraf Garda. Do use that hashtag, the National Pulse. Right, let's get into another important issue. There's not been a day in the last few months, in fact, that we've not paid attention to the city of Joburg, not because the others are not important. Of course, we have to follow every city and town, and I've even made the call to say, can you alert us so that we can get Temba and Kish to say, let's follow some of the big problems in some of the big cities and small dorpies around the country. But you can't deny the significance and the importance of the city of Johannesburg in terms of what it means to the rest of the country, right? It's also part of maybe the smallest region, but the most populous, the most densely populated, but definitely the most populous as well, right? Now, we know, there's no question about it. I live in Joburg. That city is a mess. It's a complete mess. Downtown Joburg is a complete mess, no-go area. I don't know how one can make it sound any better, okay? So what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes or so, we're chatting to the mayor of the city of Joburg, Mayor Dada Morero. We'll talk about a range of issues and hopefully get some answers on those important issues and where the city of Joburg is going next. So, Mayor Morero, good to chat with you, and thanks for connecting with us here on the National Pulse. All right, we're just trying to sort out that connection with the mayor. Let me just see. Can you hear me, Mayor Morero?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I certainly can. I'm glad we can. Right. So let's start with the first things first. First of all, thanks for being a guest on the show. Right. One of the first things you said, well, in fact, even a month ago, I think you said your task is to fix a broken city. Your task or my task is to fix...
Maybe let's start with your statement as you have just suggested, because your statement in itself suggests that there's no commitment to deal with the issue.
No, the statement the statement doesn't suggest that. The statement I'm saying, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm saying my city
has collapsed.
No, my city. The statement I'm saying my city is a mess. You've been quoted as saying My task is to fix a broken city. So in effect, we're saying the same thing.
Okay. Maybe let's start by saying thanks for the opportunity to be on your show. And secondly, say that we have made a commitment to prioritize 3 interventions. One being bylaw enforcement is one of our key priority that we have implemented since August. Service delivery being the second one, and the last one being financial sustainability. So we have taken these 3 as key to us succeeding, one, in pushing back issues around lawlessness, especially in the inner city of Johannesburg, which is Berea, Uval, and of course the CBD. And we thought this will ensure that we are able to push back by aggressively implementing bylaw enforcement. Of course, with partnerships with the South African Police Service and of course other law enforcement agencies. You know that in November we then signed a collaboration contract with the South African Police Service, and the contract speaks to working together in implementation of bylaws and dealing with crime prevention. Now, all those things then culminated in a program that was implemented last week and Wednesday, a program that is addressing the 3 areas, especially in the inner city. And we have went in full force, and we will be staying in the inner city until the end of March, wherein we'll then do a review to look at what are the successes and what are the lessons learned and what else is required of us to do. So those are the key issues we are doing now in the inner city of Johannesburg.
Okay. So what I'll do I'll go through some of them in a moment, right? I want to just go back to where it all started, because you've been quoted as saying my task is to fix a broken city, right? So how broken is the city?
Well, one of the biggest issues we have in the inner city in particular, because not all areas in the city of Johannesburg are broken. We know that the inner city of Johannesburg has become something that all of us can't identify with. Now, to an extent at which we are faced with hijacked buildings, one, we are faced with buildings that are structurally not sound. We are faced with informal settlements within abandoned buildings in the inner city. We are faced with uncontrollable levels of crime. We are faced with street trading that is not adhering to bylaws, people trading as and when and wherever they wish to. So we have to attend to those issues. We've got infrastructure collapsing, water infrastructure in particular, with pipes bursting all the time within the inner city. We're experiencing a vandalism of traffic lights and street lights constantly. We replace, but it goes back. We're also experiencing high levels of homeless people that are within the inner city, who are also contributing to some of the problems. And the bigger problem also is in relation to dumping in the inner city. You've got a lot of illegal dumping sites which have been created. So, but at the same time, we do have positive areas which would want to replicate those areas as part of the rejuvenation.
All right,
of the city.
We'll talk about the positives just in a moment. I just want to stay with what you just said, right? So clearly, if someone heard you for the first time today and you just repeated what you've just said now, the obvious thing would be, they would tell you, Mr. Mayor, how did you, when I say you, your office, how did you as an office allow the city to get into a position that it is right now? I know you've not been at the helm forever. I know that. You're fairly new there. How would you answer that? Because, I mean, we've had changes, we've had different mayors, but how did City of Joburg get to where it is right now?
Well, there's a number of factors that could have contributed to where the city is today. And one of the biggest issues that we can deal with is basically by law enforcement, with the city having dropped the ball in relation to by law enforcement, which I believe it is at the center of us experiencing what we're experiencing now. Because had we made sure that we don't drop the ball in by law enforcement, would not be where we are.
How did we drop the ball? I mean, what happened?
Basically, it would mean that there was no effective by law enforcement in the city for a longer period or a period in time where the city might have dropped. You'd know that in 2016, the city went on to aggressively implement bylaws to an extent at which removed as much as they can illegal trading in the street. NGOs came together, took the city to court. Unfortunately, the city lost the court case. And since then, the city had not had a real opportunity to confront this problem until now, where we are saying we are confronting it. We're not going to stand by. We are going to mobilize partners, business, property owners. We are going to mobilize provincial and national government to form part of the initiative. But we are focusing on by-law enforcement throughout the city of Johannesburg, because we believe that we still have other towns like Randburg CBD, the Roodepoort CBD, and so on. And it is our responsibility to ensure that even in those CBDs, we don't drop the ball. Otherwise, we'll be fixing this side and the other side will be collapsing.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure.
All right. I want to pick up some of the real problem issues in a moment, but let's just talk very briefly about the positives. You said there were positives, right? What are the positives in your city?
Well, there are precincts that we have demonstrated to be working very well with the private sector in particular. You've got your APSA, your Jewelry City precinct, which we have kept, and it has been kept very well. And in fact, the private sector has also extended the hand to the city that they would want to extend their reach within their precincts. We worked very well with the Lions, Josie My Josie, in uplifting the Ellis Park precinct, which only now what we are doing is to ensure maintenance. So at the center of this thing, for it to succeed, we believe those partnerships with the private sector, property owners and business would go a long way in ensuring that we can change the face of the city. So we are working quite closely because we are alive to the fact that government is not going to do it alone. We are also mobilizing communities through our ward councillors. I have been meeting with our ward councillors in the inner city, in particular 11 of them, with an intention of ensuring that they can mobilize their communities to be active participants by making sure they don't litter, they don't create illegal dumping site. They also participate fully in the cleaning campaigns. So in the next week, you'll start seeing communities coming to help us with the cleaning of the city.
That sounds very good. I often say, you build a champion city by building champion communities. It has to start within a community. We're chatting to the mayor of the city of Joburg, and we'll continue chatting to him right after this.
S3 and Lorna Maseko are adding flavor to your Wednesday evenings. Lorna invites you on a journey of discovering new ways of transforming South African pantry staples into delectable and budget-friendly meals. From reimagining traditional South African dishes to infusing global inspirations, Lorna's inventive recipes and seasoned cooking tips inspire creativity and will empower viewers to navigate the kitchen with savvy resourcefulness. Tune into Lorna's Pantry, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection, and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady, and you are my
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, the 48-year-old Zandile loves Outsurance Essential because it's low-cost insurance. It's designed for older cars. Now, for her 2008 Toyota Yaris T3, she only pays 391 rands a month. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. Now, what that means is if you cause an accident, the other car will be covered for up to 1 million rands. Now, add even more value with the motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS CAR to 43187. CAR 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP T's and C's and information online.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's continue chatting to the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. We'll take that conversation up to 4:30. The mayor is Dada Morero. The city of Joburg's executive mayor has been in that position in relatively short time, but making the point that he's got a huge task to fix this broken city. There's lots of pluses, some even talking about the Joburg City Library precinct is another good example of things being turned around, okay? But I'll go back to you, Mr. Mayor. You said earlier on about bylaws being implemented, and I hear that, right? What do you feel about the issue of crime? That, crime is so prevalent in the inner cities, from the city to, its feeder areas of Hillbrow and Berea, that they've become complete no-go zones, and they clearly have an impact not just on the safety of people, but also on trade and therefore the value of the properties in those areas. Now, I know crime is a national issue as well, but something drastic has got to happen in the city of Joburg.
Yeah, I think that was one of our concerns, and that is why we signed with the National Minister of the South African Police Service, so that they can also be at the center of dealing with crime. The municipality can also do something, but to a certain extent, and that is why the JMPD officers will also be stationed in those wards to help us fight crime. And we think with joint operations with the SAPS we will succeed. We did have one in February early, where we had a joint program with the SAPS in one of the wards, Ward 123, and we raided one of the buildings, and the intention was to start pushing back on crime. So as part of the IGR, we're able to do that operation. But we think we need more in the inner city, which are constant, so that you don't have an operation today and then you stay another month or two, there's no operation. So criminals immediately come back a day after the operation. So we need a constant program. We need to deploy more officers on the ground. And in that way, we can then push back. And we're also looking at investing more into technology by putting cameras. We've got an IOC, an intelligence center, which is quite operational. All what we need to do is to expand our reach in terms of cameras, because where there are cameras, it has given us an indication that at least the percentages of crime has gone down. To our turnaround time and responding to incidents of crime have also increased in those areas where we...
Okay. How are you going to deal with these hijacked buildings?
These investment that...
Okay. How are you going to deal with these hijacked buildings? I understand there's about 400 hijacked buildings in the city of Joburg.
We are dealing with hijacked buildings. We ask get the court orders, because you can't go in and remove people without a court order. We are currently sitting with 12 court orders. So it's still a mountain to climb in terms of getting more court orders. But we're also working with the private sector to also help us, especially the property owners of those hijacked buildings where they are property owners.
Mhm.
We are working with them to find a speedy way of getting these court orders, and then we can remove, because without a court order, unfortunately, we are unable to act.
Okay.
I must also indicate we have started the process of meeting with NGOs in the inner city. On Friday, I concluded a very successful meeting with an NGO called Siri in the inner city, because we have then agreed that they must also work with us to be able to clean up the city and deal with all.
Okay. What about, last week, this time, many of the residents of your city were totally frustrated because of the issues of water.
Building and those that are structural.
All right. I just think there's a lag time with the connectivity. Mayor Morero, last week, this time, many of the residents of your city were totally frustrated because they had no water for up to 7 or even 10 days, maybe even longer, right? I mean, I know there's rainwater, there's Joburg water, but help us understand how we can avoid this problem again, where there's people are just helpless.
Only one for 3 weeks without water, and this was a result of one, the power pump power station had collapsed in Vereeniging and also at Eikenhof, which meant that we were unable to pump water into the Joburg water system and be able to provide water to our residents. At the point of fixing the 2 power stations, it meant we needed to allow for a period of pumping, and thus once we've pumped into the Joburg water, then we can pump into our reservoirs. In that way, we're going to be able to supply, but it takes days for the reservoirs to therefore start filling up, and we needed them to be at the percentages which are just over 40% for you to be able to provide communities.
Okay.
And by Wednesday last week, we started getting at about 50%, and then we started ensuring that we can provide water.
All right, we
but over and above.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to news time now. I mean, just a quick one, therefore. Maybe 2 things in a 1 minute answer. How do we ensure these type of water problems don't visit us once again? Because people are so frustrated. And the second one is that, considering that with the BRICS summit coming up at the end of the year, right? And I think the city of Joburg, Gauteng, plays a hugely important role in hosting the summit. What are your specific plans around that? But you've got a minute to answer that.
It's working together with Rainwater, City Power, Joburg Water to ensure that we close the loop in terms of electricity supply to these pumps. And second is to ensure that we work with National Treasury in a long-term strategy in terms of resolving the water challenges we have.
Okay, and regarding the G20 and Joburg's plans for it?
We're excited about hosting it. We've went on ground to ensure that the routes that will be used for the conference are up to standard, whether it's traffic signal, the road infrastructure, and everything around it. So we are working hard to ensure that we provide a successful infrastructure for the conference.
Interesting, talking about the route. Some may say we've seen some of the route changes around Nasrec and much improved, but what about the rest of the city? There's so many areas without traffic lights not working. I mean, what about the residents throughout the city, not just around Nasrec?
We're working very hard throughout the city to ensure that our road infrastructure is updated, resurfaced, potholes being dealt with. You are aware that we're doing a high impact service delivery program throughout the city. And where there's budgetary challenges, we're hoping to be partnering also with the private sector to come on board, and where they can invest. We're also working through the district development model. National and provincial government we are also committing to.
And lastly,
towards,
very short answer. Lastly, short answer on this one. Lastly, if we spoke to you in a year from now, what would you be telling us about the city of Joburg?
Next year, we'll be able to tell you that we have made a serious dent in the inner city of Johannesburg. We have made a serious dent in as far as the water infrastructure and electricity infrastructure. We'll be giving those reports to practically show that what we have been able to do.
Well, we look forward to seeing you getting the city of Joburg right. Absolutely. Executive Mayor of the city of Joburg, Dada Morero, thank you for your time. Much appreciate that conversation. Comment on that conversation, certainly most welcome. Slightly delayed news headlines. Here's Daneo Matau.
Thank you, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. The stage has been set in Tshwane for Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's fourth State of the Province address this evening. The Premier is expected to outline his government's plans to deal with the persisting unemployment rate in the province, which stands at 34%. In other news, the Competition Commission wants Google to compensate South African news media between 300 million and 500 million rand annually over a 3 to 5 year period. The Commission has released the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry Provisional Report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. And the international medical charity Doctors Without Borders has suspended operations at Sudan's Zamzam displacement camp in North Darfur due to escalating violence. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg queuing towards Crown Interchange. The N3 southbound in Alexandra as a stationary vehicle reported near London Road. The N3 northbound in Bedfordview is slow moving on the link to the N12 east at Gilulis Interchange. And the N3 southbound in Germiston queuing on the link to the N12 west. In KZN, the N3 westbound in Hammersdale has a stationary truck reported after the Cliffdale exit. The N2 northbound has a crash reported after Spaghetti Junction. And the M25 Commercial Highway eastbound queuing at the N2 highway. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards Plattekloof Hill. The M3 Philip Gesana Drive outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Right, to me, let's talk about the Blitzbokke.
Yes, Blitzbokke coach Philip Snyman says that finishing second at the Vancouver Sevens ticked the box because he's on a depth-building mission this season. South Africa fell short of winning the Canada leg of the series, losing 19-12 to Argentina in the decider. But Snyman says that he saw encouraging signs of growth as he continues to build the Blitzbokke into consistent contenders. For Snyman, a top four finish in every tournament and expanding his playing depth were stated objectives at the start of the season, and those are still firmly in place at the halfway stage of the series. Now, moving on to football, Banyana captain Dino Magagula says that the team needs to be more clinical in their second and finally friendly match against Lesotho tomorrow. South Africa managed a 1-0 win over Lesotho in their first friendly at UJ Soweto Stadium on Saturday, with Nobahle Mdelwa scoring the only goal of the match. And Magugulu says that they will look to improve on their combination play from the first encounter.
Second match, I think we should finish scoring. We need to score more because we did get chances, but we're not taking those chances. So going forward, we need to make sure our combination play is on point and we're finishing all the chances that we're getting.
Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso says that they're running their own race with the business end of the Betway Premiership fast approaching. The Portuguese mentor was responding to a question on whether Downs were desperate to take advantage of their rivals, Orlando Pirates, who are still needing to play catch-up. Sundowns could stretch their lead to 15 points if they beat Sekhukhune United on Wednesday night, and Pirates would then have 4 games in hand, but Cardoso insists that their main concern is solely on themselves. Elsewhere, PSV Eindhoven have signed former Arsenal striker Lucas Perez until the end of the season, just over a week before they host the London club in the first leg of the Champions League round of 16 tie. The 36-year-old joined PSV as a free agent after leaving his hometown club last month. Perez joined Arsenal in 2016 for a fee of around 20 million euros, which is around 385 million rand, but found limited success at the Premier League side, and then he returned to Deportivo on loan the following year before joining West Ham United in 2018. Then in the Champions League update, the last time I checked, New Zealand is sitting on 82 for 3 after 17 overs. They need 155 runs in 32 overs. Earlier on, Bangladesh posting 236 for 9 in their 50 overs. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, looking forward to that. When does the South African cricket team play again in that Champions Trophy?
They play again tomorrow, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, tomorrow.
I'll confirm.
Tomorrow. Yeah. Right, more sports, today.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And to the markets we go with Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good to connect with you on this Monday, Makwe. Right, this news locally and globally as always, but let's start with Sasol.
Not looking pretty for Sasol, but even though the share price is up 0.4%, Ashraf, afternoon Q&A listeners, revenue down 10% because of a 13% decline in average rent per barrel crude oil price, and also a 5% decrease in sales volume as a result of lower production and lower market demand. And the overall financial performance, which is the adjusted EBITDA, is down 15% because of lower revenue. And there was a further impairment when it comes to Secunda, liquid fuels, and also Sasol Bank. As a result of the above, profits as headline earnings per share fell by 31%, and it's not surprising that there's no interim dividend declared. But on the positive note, cash generated from operations up 20%, supported by a favorable shift when it comes to working capital. And one can easily anticipate that uncertainty and volatility are going to remain at least through the end of Q1. Uncertainty is the new investor narrative. Weak purchasing managers index and soft consumer sentiment readings ramp up concerns over a cooling economy in the U.S., and this was exacerbated by the persistent uncertainty over Trump's policies. While softer growth does give the U.S. Central Bank more reasons to cut interest rates, it also points to a potentially weaker business environment that could hamper company earnings, and voters flock to political extremes in Germany as the centrist party stumbled, and Proximus is set to buy Just Eat Takeaway.com for almost 79 billion in cash, and it seems Trump's tariff threats are losing their shock value across asset classes. Tariff fatigue sets in. Oil is steady, waiting for clarity on Russia-Ukraine peace deal, and traders also weighing up the prospect of a resumption when it comes to crude oil exports from northern Iraq. Brent crude is up 0.2% at $74 a barrel. Yellow metal is at another record high at the back of a weaker dollar, and traders looking ahead to that key U.S. inflation data reported due on Friday. We see gold is up 0.7% at 2,953, but platinum is down 0.8%, and Europe is mixed with the U.S. up, but the JC is down 1.2%, dragged down by the industrials, and the rand is flat against the U.S. dollar 18.32, 23.16 against the pound, and 19.17 against the euro.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Makwe. We'll connect again tomorrow.
SAFM would like to thank everyone that submitted their entries for the playwriting competition. The announcement of the top 10 and winners of the competition will be announced on the 3rd of March 2025 on The Talking Point with Kathy Mutlatlana. Stay tuned to SAFM and find out who is the lucky winner. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, so I'll tell you what's still to come. We should be chatting to the Lieutenant General of the South African National Defence Force about comments regarding just the South African Defence Force position almost being sitting ducks when they go out on their expeditions on the African continent. So we'll talk about that after 5 o'clock and some of the other big developing stories that we have in the country, right? Including, by the way, the MK party saying they will not accept. No ways will they accept the issue of a hike in VAT, right? But let's talk about something that should concern you because it impacts all of us. The Competition Commission has released a provisional report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. So, you've got media as we know it, like radio or TV or newspapers, and then you've got digital, mainly pushed out through social media and things like YouTube and what have you. And one is impacting the other, right? Now, this inquiry has called the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry, well, it's called that, has found Google in particular has a monopoly in this country. And part of that, I understand, they've recommended that Google then compensate South African news to the tune of up to potentially 500 million rands a year. Wow, what does that mean? Where will this really happen? Let's find out from Katlego Legodi, who's been following that story. Katlego is the SABC News economics reporter on this issue, right? Good to connect with you as always, Katlego. Thanks for joining us.
A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to our listeners at home.
All right, so I think just from the intro, I would be very interested in where this goes, but let's start at the very beginning. This Competition Commission and their report or provisional report, how much teeth does that report have?
That report really does have teeth in terms of the law because it is based on the country's Competition Act. That would really more or less look at development in terms of the economy and some of those anti-competitive concerns that would come through from various of these sectors. So this time around, we see them looking into the media space and particularly also the prevalence of this digital space. And we see them also just thinking about issues like AI and how then social media as well will tend to impede, distort, or even encourage the development or the dissemination of news. So we see various of those stakeholders here at Ashraf. There were about 40 of them appearing before the commission here, including big giants, your SABC, your YouTube, your Google, and other smaller ones, which are your local media houses that have really been impacted by what has been happening within this space. So today, it was the release of a provisional report into developments in this space.
All right, so you say they do have teeth. So what then is likely to happen? Because I'm just interested in the headline story of 500 million an annual contribution to the news media coming from Google, right? You think that's likely to happen?
It is likely to happen because the reason why they find themselves here with that figure as well, it is through the admission of Google themselves in terms of what has been made over the years in terms of some of these algorithms or the traffic that would end up on Google platform, that we don't see the revenue or the monies going into various of these media houses that would work to ensure that they generate this news. So Google, through their admission, they appeared before the commission, and that's when they opened their books to the commission, and this is when they worked around this figure. It is actually 300 to 500 million rand annually that will have to be paid to local media houses. And the same that really, when you look at what has been happening here over the years, Ashraf, this becomes the tip of an iceberg because most of these media houses will talk about trillions that would be made and generated where some of these engines, Google and the likes, are concerned. And most of them have been talking about even going under because they're not getting the best out of these revenues that are more or less accumulated from these platforms. So this time around, we see most of these to-go players here coming through to the Competition Commission about the challenges and some of the experiences where some of these issues are concerned. So here we're talking about traffic in terms of algorithms. For instance, when you search SABC or when you search Google and then you want to check an article, what pops up, what comes out first, and how do we see some of these vernacular languages, for instance, accommodated on some of these platforms.
Okay.
So these are the issues that the Competition
All right,
Commission has been
so
looking
just to maybe repeat it in a slightly different way, help us understand this. How, on this point of compensation of 500 or 300 to 500 million rands, right? Map out the scenario for us. I mean, we've had traditional media. How has the digital space now impacted traditional media where you can say it's eating traditional media's lunch? I mean, give us examples of that.
It is actually doing that. It is what was revealed in this provisional report would give you the imbalances that exist within this space where revenue is concerned. So we see them saying that this is a dynamic sector, that over time, local media houses have not been benefiting from this in terms of the algorithms or the news that would end up at these platforms. Most of them even saying we're not getting a cent for YouTube to more or less be, repurposing some of the work that they find themselves on their platforms. We don't get a cent from YouTube when you see traffic driven there to YouTube. When people go and subscribe and they do a search, the monies and the traffic doesn't come to the SABC. It doesn't come to the local media house. It goes to Google. And Google is already a giant here. So they're saying that really when you look at it, the world is moving into that space. Today, the Commission telling us that really when you look at it, they conducted a survey that would reveal a shift in the news consumption. So over 70% of consumers in the country are accessing news on digital platforms. So how do actually various of these media houses capitalize and get the best of these platforms in terms of their revenues? So this will be worked out after the final report is released in about 6 months or so, 5-6 months or so. That will give us the modalities and the approaches and how then they're going to be working on extracting and getting this money from Google and other platforms.
All right, now just the last thing, and I find this very interesting. You know that if you've got really huge YouTube accounts, you can monetize. And I see one of the recommendations is that YouTube has to improve the ability of the media and broadcasters, including the SABC, to be able to monetize of their platforms that would be housed on YouTube. Explain that.
It's all about transparency, really, when you look at it. And we hear as well that over time, so some of these platforms have gotten into deals with various of media houses that would not in any way be in line with the Competition Act. So they're saying that as you see some of these platforms ending up on news items, ending up on YouTube, for instance, we haven't seen somewhat of a threshold of some sort or a direct approach that would be a market figure that would be given to those that would find their news or items on YouTube, for instance. So we see them just really saying that there is a need for transparency, there is a need to level the playing field, which is why when they're expecting all of these players within this space to be transparent going forward in line with the Competition Act.
Okay. What happens next?
What happens next is that, so this was a provisional report. So what follows here would be a consultation process whereby those role players, 40 stakeholders or so, will go into this provisional report, and then those stakeholders will have 6 weeks to make submissions on the findings and the remedies here. The Competition Commission is then looking to accommodate all of those issues that are raised in the 6 weeks, and this will actually form part of the final report that will be released in the next 4 to 5 months. That will be accommodated, encompassing of what came out of this particular process that follows next. But also, they're looking to ensure that there is, the ball is rolling, because they're saying over time there have been those imbalances in the sector.
And I'm thinking many people in the newsrooms are saying, we can't wait. Katlego Legori, SABC News economics reporter, appreciate your time and your insights into this fascinating Competition Commission provisional report into the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. This is the National Pulse.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, let's get to your thoughts. Okay, so I need to get a feel of the pulse, and you give it to me in Frontline KZN. Go for it.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you for taking my call.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, let me pass on the issue of Google first. The competition must leave Google alone, because the Google is doing so much tremendous job on providing people with proper access of information. Section 32 of the Constitution. So, with the challenge that they are imposing, it's like they are saying Google must stop what they're doing, because there's so much of information that is being controlled.
I don't think they're quite saying that. I think what they're saying is that when Google needs us to Google and then or to go onto YouTube, and then when we go even to newsrooms, right, that Google benefits from massive traffic on their sites, and therefore the content that is shared, the newsrooms need to be compensated. That's really what it is, because there's been a move away. Otherwise, the newsrooms will die. That's really what it is.
The thing is, the media news it failed to follow their mandate of ensuring that they provide proper access of information.
Okay, but let's see what happens. I mean, look, this is a provisional report. Okay, in Tlantla, thanks for that call. Right, let's move on to comments about the Joburg mayor.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you, Mafuta? Good afternoon to the mayor there. Ashraf, if the mayor and his team would try to solve two things, for me, those two things are unemployment and lawlessness. The city of Joburg is no longer an African world-class city. Those two areas, Ashraf, I think that the central issues around all other matters that are destroying Joburg, Ashraf.
Well, I think you're right. Lawlessness as in absolute crime, and then disobeying of bylaws, which I think the mayor made the point, and then the issues of unemployment and hijacked buildings, where they've just allowed, 400 buildings in that city have been hijacked. In which world can you allow that and think the city will thrive? It just can't, isn't it? There's further comments about the mayor.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Agmatebula. Mr. Ashraf, listening to Tate Dademura, sometimes I feel like a mayor is just a mayor just to get paid. Because each and every mayor come and say, we'll remove hijacked building, we'll remove this and that. In Johannesburg, as a mayor, he knows that a lot of robots are not working every day. Even we don't have load shedding. The robots are not working. But the crime itself, you can't even have a phone call inside CBD. This is Agmatebula.
Well, I mean, I think we all absolutely know that it's allowed to fester.
Hey, Ashraf, the mayor of Joburg yesterday went to visit Mrs. South Africa and tweeted about it. And I could see that the citizens were not happy about that, because we have no water, we have no power. We don't want to hear about Mrs. South Africa. We understand issues of social cohesion, but we need water, we need electricity. So when is he going to stop doing those blunders where he just goes online and do things that are not good for the city or are just not gelling well with the citizens? Thanks.
Well, I mean, I think to be fair to him, I mean, I saw those reports. If somebody wins a Mrs. South Africa or a Mrs. World South Africa who represents South Africa, how and from this city, how can the mayor not do that? I mean, Mandela did it. They would run and celebrate them. They would do that all the time. The fact that other things happen at the same time means he's got to address the other things too. Now, the issue of Eskom is not his direct problem, let's be fair. On the issue of the water, I think they were very neglectful for a long time, but last week they went out and did a site tour to many of them, so he did do that. I'm not saying he's right, but he did do that.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Helman Mashaba had the recipe for Johannesburg. He had the medicine for Joburg. People criticized him, the human rights and so forth. We were not going to have that instance of people burning in that flat if Helman Mashaba had cleaned Joburg. Herman from Brixton.
Okay, Herman, about Herman. Well, was Herman Mashaba right? Many people are praiseworthy of him, but it was very clear in terms of rule of law. And I think what the mayor made the point about NGOs who contested legally the case to evict, against evicting, people living in hijacked buildings, as well as, putting up informal stores on the streets. And they won that case. And as a result of that nothing happened from 2016. So that's another, 9 years.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The mayor is not pro-South Africa business because, as you heard, the first contract of the Bridge Street was given to a Zimbabwean company. They couldn't finish it, but they got all the money. The second one has been given to a Nigerian business. What's wrong with South African businesses that have been long here, either black or white? What's wrong with that? Because this mayor, I think, is pro-foreigners. Remember his statement again of employing the foreigners. It's not good for us in Joburg. No wonder the ANC is regressing, is losing voters. Anonymous from Soweto, thank you.
Okay, Anonymous, okay, you've certainly made your point. I wonder who agrees with that.
Ashraf and the SFM listener. Ashraf, this Motsepe Foundation, they're doing the right thing to giving back to the people. But the problem, when they say they're going to give to the church, they just give in to the predicant, the pastor. Then that pastor is just quenching that money alone with his people and so on and so on. And the rest of the, congregation knowing nothing. Then coming to the kingdom, the kings, the queens, also they just taking that money into their pocket. He's supposed to announce it publicly, everyone, so that they can see, so that they're not going to have a chance to eat it.
Okay, well, look, they got to give it, as you said, to the predicant, somebody in charge, and then how they distribute it, I don't know, but they can't give it to every single person, can they? Here's another comment. The government is busy building more. No, I think that one's a bit old. Let me just get this right. Sorry. After Ashraf, Herman Mashaba is the only solution for Johannesburg's Metro Municipality Anonymous. Anonymous Sun City Prison. That means what? That you are there in prison right now. Asked Dada, why did they allow Joburg DK for such a long time? Herman Mashaba got it right. Dealing with hijacking and cleaning up Joburg, but ANC was bent on disabling him always against every mayor who was not the ANC. Comes from Matari in the Gauteng province. Lots to reflect on all of that. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. Gauteng Premier to deliver his SOPA and operation suspended at Sudan refugee camp. Good day to you. The stage has been set in Pretoria for Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's State of the Province address this evening. He is expected to outline his government's plans to deal with the persisting unemployment rate in the province, which stands at 34%. He's also expected to speak on the provincial government's efforts to deal with crime and poor service delivery. The ACDP is hoping the Premier will table how he will deal with the housing challenge. The party's Dalton Adams.
I want the Premier to deal specifically with youth unemployment because it's a major crisis. Because if the youth unemployment is not being dealt with, you will find that the issues of drugs and the social ills will continue in our young people's lives, the gangsterism and violence, the issue of human settlements. We want him to begin there. No houses were built in so-called colored areas for the last 30 years. And there is a challenge.
Meanwhile, Gauteng traffic police have urged motorists to exercise caution on the roads ahead of the State of the Province address in Pretoria this evening. Traffic police spokesperson Selo Maramane.
There will be no road closures. However, we are anticipating traffic congestion around Silverton, Nelmafias, as well as Willows. Heavy traffic flows are anticipated on the following streets: the N4 between Watermeyer and Solomon Mahlangu Drive, Alvain Street towards Nelmafias, Watloo Street towards Silverton, the Old Bronco Sprays towards Nelmafias.
MP Colin Makabele says there have been no clear indications from the SABC leadership about how to fix challenges facing the public broadcaster. She says the SABC continues to struggle to find creative ways of raising revenue. Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies conducted an oversight visit at the SABC's headquarters in Auckland Park in Johannesburg today. Makubele elaborates.
We have tried changing boards, we've tried changing CEOs. It has not helped the SABC. So clearly, the issues that we are facing are not in cost reduction or in changing the coaches or the players. I'm asking myself, even if we come up with a policy today, are we going to fix the SABC with a policy? My layman answer is no. The reason the OTTs are doing so well and they are taking advantage of the space that SABC has opened, and even the other social media platforms, is lack of creativity in how to generate revenue.
The eThekwini Municipality's Electricity Department in KwaZulu-Natal is expected to conduct an urgent system upgrade this evening. It's expected to take place between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock tonight. In a statement, the municipality says this is to ensure overall efficiency and reliability of services. During this downtime, the city's prepaid electricity vending system and its online fault reporting platform will be affected. However, the city's confirmed that while there may be intermittent access to these services during the upgrade, consumers are encouraged to purchase their prepaid electricity tokens before the upgrade begins. Finally, the international medical charity Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, has suspended operations at a displacement camp in Sudan in North Darfur due to escalating violence. The BBC's Richard Kagoe has more.
MSF says it deeply regrets the decision made during what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Relentless shelling between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces has affected its ability to deliver vital medical aid. The organization also fears for the safety of its staff as the RSF intensifies attacks on civilians. This latest escalation in the two-year-old conflict further compounds the suffering of the 12 million Sudanese already displaced in a region on the brink.
The top story: the stage has been set in Pretoria for Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's State of the Province address this evening. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Coase.
In your sports this hour, Kenya's Misoi provisionally suspended for doping, Claassen in race to be fit for Australia clash, and Snyman satisfied with silver in Vancouver. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Midrand is queuing towards Samrand Road. The N1 southbound in Centurion is queuing towards Buerta Avenue exit. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a crash reported after Spaghetti Junction, and Old North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kubuk interchange. The N2 inbound has a felt fire reported with smoke affecting visibility towards Muway. The M3 southbound is queuing towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 southbound has a crash reported before Racecourse Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply. SAFM would like to thank everyone that submitted their entries for the playwriting competition. The announcement of the top 10 and winners of the competition will be announced on the 3rd of March 2025 on The Talking Point with Kathy Mutlatlana. Stay tuned to SAFM and find out who is the lucky winner. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, did you listen to the conversation I had with the City of Joburg's executive mayor, Dada Morero? And if so, what did you make of it in terms of what he said, his admissions, his vision in terms of what needs to be done, and how convinced are you that, in fact, these things are actually happening? There's a fancy wish list. What do you think? You can listen to the entire podcast. Just go to the website, safm.coza. Then, of course, the tab is, podcast, and then you find it under the National Pulse. You'll have a whole range of interviews that we've done from this show, all available there, right? Okay, let's talk about another big issue that's developed over the weekend, right? The South African National Defence Force Lieutenant General Peter Ntshavheni Mapapa made comments that did not sit well with the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans. Speaking at the funeral of the Staff Sergeant Ishmael Molatleli, held in the Free State over the weekend, he said this.
What I'm going to say here, I may be trampling on some cones, so please pardon me, Premier, and the parliamentarians that are here. All of you know that South Africa, in its position in the world, we are a global player. In Africa, we are the leader in terms of economics and geopolitics. And therefore, we are considered a big brother. No, you cannot be a big brother if you are unable to wield a stick that will make people be afraid. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is he talking about and all that? How many of you will build a beautiful and expensive house and not fence it and protect it? I don't think none of you will do that. Constitutionally, the South African National Defence Force is mandated to protect and defend the country. Now, any home will display its character, its worthiness, by the level of security that it places around it. Now, if we're going to play big brother in Africa, and therefore what we give for the Defence Force should symbolize that. A lot has been said about the South African National Defence Force not being well equipped, not being resourced and all that. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm saying, and I'm appealing to the politicians that are here, that next time you sit down and debate, think whether you are protected or not. Because that grant that you're giving to the people out there, the education of your children and everything else will not materialize if you're not protected. I'm sure many of you know that we are sharing our grants for the poor with people who are not supposed to share the grants. And that is because we are not protected. Our borders are porous. And they're porous because you, the politicians, have decided you want a Mickey Mouse Defence Force. I'm sorry to say that. And by the way, the Adjutant General is here. I'm protected. I'm not making a political speech, by the way.
Okay, there we are. The politicians want a Mickey Mouse Defence Force. The last thing he said, that is so telling. Well, one may argue, why would he have to apologize twice for saying what he believes, right? We're talking about the South African National Defence Force Lieutenant General Peter Ntshavheni Mapapa, right? Mapaha, right? Now, let's get the thoughts then of Pikkie Greeff, who is the South African National Defence Union's National Secretary. Pikkie, I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Right. What do you make of that? I mean, lots of other things were said, but the last line was telling. We have a porous defense force, a porous country, because we have a Mickey Mouse defense force.
Well, I'm afraid that everything that the Surgeon General said there is factual. There's no argument there. It needed to be said, and people don't always like what they hear, but the ones who don't like it are the ones who made it the way it is, and that's the politicians.
So you'd agree with his point that the politicians effectively have set up the defense force for failure because, to quote, it's a Mickey Mouse defense force.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. The politicians bear the brunt of this. They are the ones who did budget vote after budget vote, cutting defense budgets. And as he rightly pointed out, dispersing the budget elsewhere. And yes, we can argue that education and welfare and all those things are very important. Of course they are. But he's dead right. We've said it many times before that the defense force is this country's right to exist. And without a defense force that's effective and capable, we might as well, give up our sovereignty, and all of these other things that we try to look after, like education and social welfare and so on, will really be very insecure.
Interesting, he gave that example, which I think is very, very easy to understand about, you're building a beautiful home and then you don't secure it. You have to secure it with a fence or an alarm system. And I think we all completely resonate with that statement, right? But would that not be a case where we're talking about a country that is under attack? And, is South Africa under attack?
No, it's not under attack, but I think the point is you take security measures because of what may happen. And if you don't have proper security measures in place, then there are role players who would want to take advantage of you. And it's not necessarily always a military attack that one has to face. If one, for instance, faces a flood of migrants into the country and you don't have proper security, you'll never be able to control that in a proper way. Someone else also one of the defense experts made an excellent point the other day when he said that the world that we're facing is changing since the World War II. The setup that we had is changing. It seems that countries are embracing imperialism, violating one another's borders. So you might find yourself in future, South Africa find itself in future, like you've seen how easy that can come, where we are drawn into a conflict that we didn't necessarily want. And if that happens, then we're in trouble if we keep on going with the defense force the way it's now.
So the point made about, under budgeting, right, or budget cuts, that has applied across the board. We speak to the Minister of Health about doctors, we don't have money. Education, we don't have money. Nursing, we don't have money. I can go on and on and on, right? The problem is, yes, they may have prioritized other areas, but what happens in a case where the country just does not have enough money to spread around? And that's contextual because of the proposed 2% increase in VAT. Why? Because the government doesn't have money.
No, exactly. I think that's the other point that the Surgeon General was making, is that if you want to adopt a certain geopolitical posture as a country, then you must see to it that you have the muscle to back it up. So I would go one step back and say South Africa, then, if it really doesn't have money and has an income problem, then what it needs to do is decide how much then one must decide, what are you capable of doing with the little money that you do have? If that means that you should rein in your geopolitical ambitions and you should rein in your expectations from your military, then you need to do that. The fact is, you can have a big and ineffective military, or you can have a small, very effective military. The size doesn't really matter. It's about whether the equipment works, whether the people are resourced properly to do their jobs properly.
What impact does this have, and this goes squarely to where you sit, to the morale of the members of the Defence Force? These are military people. When they hear things like that, true or not, what does it do with their morale?
Well, they know it's true, and that's the talking point among soldiers. is the fact that, the military is falling apart. Not because they're bad soldiers, but because there's simply not the resources and stuff being handed to them to do their jobs. The Surgeon General himself, I happen to know him in person. He is very, very frustrated at the way that the medical health services have deteriorated over the past 10 years. It's pure frustration. It's very demoralizing to soldiers. And, I'm afraid where the morals, or where people become demoralized, the first victim, or the first thing that happens is that discipline tends to go down, especially amongst the lower ranks. I'm not saying our soldiers are ill-disciplined, but it's a risk that we face. The more demoralized a force is, the less disciplined there will be.
Yeah. What then is your practical suggestion? I mean, keeping in mind there are budget constraints, okay? On the one hand, then you hear what was said about this, Mickey Mouse Defense Force, and that doesn't all go well for anybody listening in, right? What for you would be the practical solution?
I think South Africa must sit down and stop being in denial. That's number one, about where the Defence Force is. Secondly, it must swallow its pride and probably say that, look, for the next couple of decades, at least the next decade, we won't be able to be the major role player geopolitically, not on a military level or a peace enforcement level anyway. So let's reconfigure what can we do with the money we have, and then we adjust our Defence Force accordingly.
Okay, lots to consider. Thank you for your time, Pikkie Greeff, the SANDU National Secretary, responding to the comments by the SANDF Lieutenant General, suggesting that our borders are porous because we have a Mickey Mouse, or the politicians have seen to it that we have this Mickey Mouse Defence Force. I have no doubt you have a view on that.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
Switching to OUTsurance has definitely saved me money, 2,107 rands per month. I would recommend OUTsurance to all business owners because they will definitely save money. With OUTsurance, you always get something out.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Meet TJ, the magician. Well, he isn't quite the magician, but shame, let's call him that. The other day he tried to do that coin ear trick. Poor Owami is still in the hospital with a 5 rand coin stuck in his ear. He tried getting his pit bull, Mufasa, to levitate. Oh, he got that right. But now Mufasa is levitating through Tembisa, and somehow TJ forgot to read the section on how to get Mufasa back down. It's tough being a magician, but luckily for TJ, Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician will be the perfect inspiration for him to be the best magician in Tembisa. Catch Britain's Got Talent Ultimate Magician Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Now, 47-year-old Abner loves OUTsurance Essential because it's low-cost insurance made for older cars. For his 2006 Opel Corsa Utility 1.4, he only pays $253 a month. With OUTsurance Essential, accident claims are paid in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. Now, top this up with a motor warranty, which then covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns as well. Get savings with OUTsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS CAR to 43187. You got it, CAR 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Early on, I chatted to the mayor of Joburg. Please listen to the podcast. It's about 20 minutes. We had a conversation on about a whole range of things. So catch it, safm.co.za. You'll get the podcast. We'll probably tweet it out as well soon. But here's one where he responded to my question about crime in Johannesburg's inner city.
Yeah, I think that was one of our concerns. And that is why we signed with the National Minister of the South African Police Service so that they can also be at the center of dealing with crime. The municipality can also do something, but to a certain extent. And that is why the JMPD officers will also be stationed in those wards to help us fight crime. And we think with joint operations with the SAPS, we will succeed. We did have one in February early, where we had a joint program with the SAPS in one of the wards, Ward 123, and we raided one of the buildings, and the intention was to start pushing back on crime. So as part of the IGR, we're able to do that operation. But we think we need more in the inner city, which are constant, so that you don't have an operation today and then you stay another month or two, there's no operation. So criminals immediately come back a day after the operation. So we need a constant program. We need to deploy more officers on the ground. And in that way, we can then push back. And we're also looking at investing more into technology by putting cameras. We've got an IOC, an intelligence center, which is quite operational. All what we need to do is to expand our reach in terms of cameras, because where there are cameras, it has given us an indication that at least the percentages of crime has gone down. To our turnaround time and responding to incidents of crime have also increased in those areas where we...
Okay.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, Sunday World keeps you updated. Get breaking news, sports action, and exclusive celeb scoops at your fingertips. Read it, stream it, listen to Sunday World News for all, anytime, anywhere.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair...
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Okay, let's now pick up on another issue that's developed where the MK party, Mkhonto we Sizwe, where they've had a press briefing or a media briefing and raised a whole range of issues, right? So let's do this. We're going to get the SABC News reporter who's covering that story, which is Sibatle Mota. Sibatle, good chatting to you as always. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, as well as to the listeners.
Thank you. So you were our eyes and ears. What did they say, the MK party?
So basically, this press briefing covered a wide range of issues that it just included the structures of the party. But more importantly, they mentioned the fact that a disciplinary hearing or internal disciplinary process has begun against Duduzile Zuma Sambundla. I mean, Ashraf, as you can remember, she took onto Twitter insulting the party Secretary General Floyd Shivambu, calling him all sorts of names, just expressing her dissatisfaction over how certain issues are handled within the party. So now we've heard from the Deputy Secretary General to say that the internal disciplinary process has begun, and they will obviously keep us updated on the issue. And I think what was also interesting is the fact that while the question was asked, it was the Deputy Secretary General who answered the question and not Flo Shivambu, who had actually been the subject of those insults by Zuma Sambundla. So that was one of the issues that came up. But another issue that I think more importantly that came up is the leadership of Mpumalanga. As you know, just I think over a week ago, Advocate Busiwe Mkhwebane, who the MK says is the rightful convener for the province, held a rally to celebrate the party's 1-year anniversary. And while that was happening, the other convener, Mary Padi, who was also suspended from the party and lost the position of Mpumalanga convener, also held a parallel rally. So Flo Shivambu, the Secretary General, making it quite clear that Advocate Busiwe Mkhwebane will remain the rightful convener for Mpumalanga province as opposed to Mary Padi, and that the national leadership will be taking a visit to Mpumalanga province just to try and hear what these divisions are, as well as speak to everybody that is disgruntled by the fact that Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane remains the convener of Mpumalanga.
Okay, and did they comment therefore just about the recurring cases of disciplinary committee meetings, about stories of infighting and lots of changes that's taken place within a fairly new party?
I mean, they did say, they made quite a lot of comments regarding this infighting, and then saying that it will not be tolerated. I mean, Flo Shivambu sending out quite a stern message that they will not tolerate any infighting because obviously such infighting will ultimately lead to the demise of the party. So you are finding that 2 other names of people who are suspended from the party were not mentioned in the press briefing because they are still subject of some internal disciplinary action. So you are seeing that a lot of the people in the MK are quite disgruntled. I mean, if you were part of this media briefing, you could hear certain members even sitting down, just, like little murmurings that you would hear when certain decisions or certain announcements were made. So they are trying to nip it in the bud, but I mean, that will also be such a mammoth task because a lot of people just feel like while they were part of the MK at the beginning stages are now being outshined by various big names. I mean, such is the case of Busisiwe Mkhwebane and Mary Pardee. So this is something that the organization is trying to tackle by all means.
If the purpose of this was to give clarity, but also to give us a show of force as to who's in charge, because there's been lots of that debate in the last 2 weeks, did that come across that, those who were there at the media briefing, maybe outside of President Zuma, were other people in charge?
I mean, honestly, from what I could gather and from what I could hear, is that they are a bit divided, yet they are trying to show this united front. I mean, as you know, the organization has done fairly well in the 2024 elections, and now they are building up to the local government elections and trying to consolidate their structures. So while Floyd did come across as very stern, you could still hear the murmurs from the participants, or rather the MK party members. So only time will tell as to how they deal with this and if they are able to move forward showing a united front.
Okay. Lastly, I know they also commented about the issue of the budget speech. The budget speech that didn't happen and their position regarding VAT. What did they say?
So basically, they took jabs at the government of national unity. I mean, the fact that they could not go ahead with this budget speech, and that the MK party will also just prove as an alternative, and also just hitting out at the fact that budget could not be passed. And this obviously comes at the detriment of the poor masses of people who actually benefit from this, and also like slamming the government on this 2% hike and saying that they will oppose any sort of hike because from what they know that the VAT is only 14%, and that is something that they will fight. And even though governments may add on 2% or even 1%, the MK party will fight against this. So you can tell that they are quite dissatisfied with the fact that budget was not passed by the government of national unity, but also they are just disgruntled at the cost of living if any sort of VAT or percentage in VAT had to be added to the current one.
Yeah, okay, let's leave it at that. Appreciate your time, Simatle Mota. Thanks for that, and certainly we'll get further reaction on that issue of the MK party and their position and what they've said around disciplinary committee hearings, etc., etc. You have a thought? Well, you drive the National Pulse. You tell me what you think. 086 000 2032. That's to call in live. Always save that number. Save the WhatsApp number too, where you can send us either text messages or a voice note, 0614 104 107. And there are people I know tweeting, so you can do that. Tag SAFM Radio and myself, Ashraf Garda. Right, first things first, it's 5:30. Here's the news headlines with Greg House.
A quick look at the headlines. The stage has been set in Pretoria for Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's State of the Province address this evening. The MK party has initiated an internal disciplinary process against party member Duduzile Zuma Sambutla, and counterfeit goods of different brands that include clothes, cigarettes, sneakers and many more worth 3.4 million rand have been confiscated in the northwest. We'll have a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The N1 southbound in Fourways queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. The N3 southbound in Alexandra is queuing towards London Road. The N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash reported near Allendale Road, and the N1 southbound in Centurion has a crash reported before Buerta Avenue exit. In KZN, the N2 northbound has a stationary vehicle before the M41 Gateway exit. The N2 southbound has a stationary vehicle before Spaghetti Junction. The N2 northbound has a crash after Spaghetti Junction. The M4 northbound queuing towards Virginia Airport, and the N3 queuing on the link to the N2 north at Spaghetti Junction. In the northwest, on the N4, protesting reported in the central Zeerust area. You are to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound queuing towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 southbound has a crash before Racecourse Road exit. The N7 checks Hadville Drive southbound slow moving at Voortrekker Road, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, let's get to sport. Tumi, what are you talking about? You're worried about an athlete, you're worried about cricket, you're worried about football. How do you balance all this out?
Well, we're going to start off with athletics this hour, where a Kenyan marathon runner, Bremen Musoe, has been professionally suspended after he tested positive for prohibited substances. Musoe won the Sydney Marathon last year in a course record time of 2 hours and 6 minutes, and the Frankfurt Marathon in 2022 and 2023. Now, marathon running has been hit with a spate of high-profile doping cases in recent years, particularly from powerhouse Kenya. It's a developing story, and we'll definitely keep an eye on it. Then in cricket, the Proteas are sweating over the fitness of Heinrich Klaasen for their Champions Trophy Group B fixture against Australia tomorrow. Klaasen is busy recovering from an elbow injury, which made him miss the opener. South Africa cruised to a 107-run victory over Afghanistan in their opening match, and now will face an Australian side that successfully chased 352 with 15 balls to spare to beat England by 5 wickets in their first game. On the other hand, the Aussies are without Pat Cummins, Josh Hazelwood and Mitchell Stark, but SA captain Themba Bavuma says that they will not take their injury-hit opponents very lightly. And then still staying with the Champions League, just to give you an update, it's drinks now, and New Zealand are sitting on 165 for 3. After 33 overs, they need 72 runs in 17 overs to win. Remember, Bangladesh posted 236 for 9 in their 50 overs. In football, Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, says that the video assistant referee will be available at the end of April. Last year, McKenzie promised to speed up the VAR process after attending a SAFA NEC meeting in Gqeberha, where he learned that this would always be a costly project. Now, he has committed to a date for the installation of the technology.
I made the promise to South Africa that VAR is coming. I said the end of April. Nothing has changed. We'll see. I see there's some teams that are worried about VAR. I'm not going to mention names here. The ones that love sport of soccer, they'll be happy for VAR. If you are a corrupt referee, your time is coming to an end. VAR will expose you, and we will prosecute the corrupt referees.
In football, Banyana captain Dineo Magagula says that the team needs to be more clinical in their second and final friendly match against Lesotho tomorrow. South Africa managed a narrow 1-0 win over Mehala Ditwe in their first friendly at UJ Soweto Stadium, with Nobatle Mdelwa scoring the only goal of the match. And Magagula says that they will look to improve their combination play for the first encounter.
Second match, I think we should finish scoring. We need to score more because we did get chances, but we're not taking those chances. So going forward, we need to make sure our combination play is on point and we're finishing all the chances that we get in.
And finally, in motorsport, George Russell says that he believes Mercedes have made a reasonable step with their new car that they unveiled today. Russell said that the W16E was going to be a significant change from last year. Now, Mercedes won 4 races in 2024, but the car's performance was inconsistent and Mercedes finished 4th. The car is doing a brief shakedown test in Bahrain tomorrow before the official F1 preseason test at the track at the track, and it starts on Wednesday. And the first race is the Australian Grand Prix on the 14th to the 16th of March. On that note, it is a wrap from my side.
Okay, there we are. So again, we said so confirmation we are playing tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
You said we think
Tomorrow.
South Africa tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if they win, they should be where? I need to keep track of these formats, man.
I think if they win, actually, they will have a foot into the next round. So, yeah, we're hoping that they do win. However, it's a tricky one against Australia.
It's only Australia. Come on. Right. More. You better say goodbye. I don't want to take the complaints, really.
All right, then. With that said, ke Natume Kgapela, Modimo ke yo.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection, and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady and you are my man.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Well, I'll tell you what, when there's issues of load shedding, you say, how does it impact the economy? So I wonder what, Jimmy Moya, what do you have to say today ahead of your show, the SAFM Market Update?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. We've got quite a bit coming up on the show. We'll take a look at how the markets have been moving in a second, but we are going to be taking a look at that FATF update, the Financial Action Task Force update that the National Treasury gave us on Friday around where we stand with regards to grey listing. We're now targeting getting off grey listing by October of this year. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the permutations around that and what still needs to be done from that perspective. We're going to be speaking to National Treasury themselves around that, but we're also going to be getting the reactions and the thoughts of another independent economist as well. So we're going to be seeing if we can make sense of where we are there and what still needs to be done. We've also got a conversation with Sasol around their half-year results. They gave us an update bright and early this morning around how their first half of their year went. So we're going to speak to their chief financial officer and see what we make of the performance there. Then we've got a conversation with 91 as well around investment mistakes to avoid. We're going to speak to the sales manager at 91 around some of the investment mistakes he's avoided or made in his 30-plus years in the financial services industry. So certainly a lot to learn from that perspective. And we're going to see if we can apply some of those learnings to our own investment journeys, because those are very important journeys as well. And then we've got our tech feature. We're going to be taking a look at the launch of the new iPhone 16e. Interestingly enough, this is probably the first time that Apple has launched a device in South Africa at the same time that it is launching it in the US. So we're going to take a look at that, the reasons behind that, potentially the rationale from an Apple point of view. And I'd be interested to actually look at that from a tariff point of view, but the tariff point of view might have to be a different conversation, because we are in a very awkward and tense relationship with the United States at the moment, so we might be seeing some things come out from that relationship that could affect things like Apple devices that we import from the US. So we've got quite a bit to dig into on our show a little later on. But before we go, let me give you a sense of how the markets have performed throughout the day. It has been a rather good day for the Rand if you're looking at the Rand, but a rather interesting day for equity markets. Equity markets were largely a bit of a mixed bag, especially if you are looking at international markets, because if you look at Asian markets, mainland China and the Hang Seng were in the red, but ASX in Sydney and the The Nikkei in Tokyo were in the green. If you look at the European markets, also a bit of a mixed bag. The FTSE was down 0.33%. The DAX was up almost 0.4%. The CAC 40 in France was down 0.8%. The Nasdaq is currently down 0.2%. The S&P is currently down 0.1%. Obviously, they are going to be trading into the evening, so those numbers would likely change as we go further into the evening. Our own local markets didn't have the best day. Industrials down 3%, financials down 0.5%, and resources down 0.2%. As a result, the all-share came all the way down by 1.6%. The top 40 is back below 80,000 points, came down by 1.8%. So I'm going to be digging into some of those driving factors there from a stock point of view and which companies would have done the biggest moves there to push us down. But as I said, the rand doing well. 18 rand 36 is what $1 will cost you today. €1 will cost you 19 rand 22, and £1 23 rand and 18 cents. $1 Australian will cost you 11 rand and 66 cents, and the price of a Bitcoin is below $95,000 a coin, currently at around $94,260 odd a coin, or in South African rand terms, 1.73 million rand. So still doing well there from a Bitcoin perspective if you're holding in South African rands, I suppose. The gold price made what looked like new highs again today, sitting at $2,936 an ounce. Brent crude back below $75. That always makes me happy. $74.32 a barrel. Platinum and palladium below $1,000 a fine ounce in each case. That never makes me happy. Platinum $971, palladium $959-ish. So we're going to look at some of the commodity movements a little later on. We're also going to take a look, as I said, at what's been happening on the local equity front and where we go to from here, understanding that we've got a couple of data points out this week. We've got CPI data out from South Africa this week. We've got PCE data, that's personal consumption expenditure data, out from the US this week. But we'll dig into these data points as we go into the rest of the week, and we'll be back a little later on to look at the market movements of the day. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. You enjoy your show 6 to 7 with the SAFM Market Update, followed by Michael Abramson with Sport from 7 to 8. You got that. What you need to do next is we'll get your calls. I need to connect with you. I need to get a feel of your pulse.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, lots of comment. I'll get to calls in a moment. People talking about, amongst other things, Herman Mashaba too.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the SFM listeners. I'm surprised, Ashraf, with your caller who's saying Herman Mashaba had a recipe to clean Joburg. Herman Mashaba was the mayor of Joburg. Herman Mashaba knows very well the big guys, the big guns who are benefiting from the so-called hijacked buildings. He knows very well, but he did nothing. Why? It's because it's us civilians who will be fooled. But these guys, it's a big boys club. They are in the same WhatsApp group. We can talk and talk and talk and talk. It's not going to change anything. He knows very well the people who are benefiting from these so-called hijacked buildings. Thanks, James in Johannesburg.
Well, I mean, look, my memory doesn't serve me perfectly all the time, but I think I was pretty clear that Herman Mashaba was very, very clear about sorting out the issue of hijacked buildings in the time that he was there. That's what I think. If anybody has a better memory than I do, well, let me know. We need to hear it. Again, the issue of hijacked buildings regarding the conversation I had with the current mayor of Joburg.
Ashraf, good afternoon, and your listeners. Ashraf, you don't need a mayor to stop what you call hijacking. You need systems. People who are there, who are doing bureaucracy, we don't have the right people for the right jobs. Those people have been there. They allow the situation to be where it is today. This is not about Dada Morero or any politician. It's the people at the top who don't know what they are doing. So we need to start to say, these people must be audited. People who are not fit must be retrenched, and then we hire people who can perform as per their, their position or authority.
Okay, well, I mean, you're right. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who's in charge. A system must be implemented so that whoever comes in implements and just executes on that system. It's when the systems change every time and they break down, then every single change in leadership effectively means a complete disruption of service delivery, and that's no good.
Hey, Ashraf, how are you, man? The only thing that can solve all this crime that is taking place, not only in Joburg CBD or in Joburg, all over South Africa, the only thing that can solve that is allowing the police to be the police. It's giving the police their powers back to control the crime. That's the only thing that can solve this. But as long as the people are holding the powers that are supposed to be held by the police, there's nothing that can solve this. Thank you, man.
Allowing the police to be the police. Are we saying that others are holding powers that prevents the police from being the police? Give me some names. Give me some positions. I want to know. To calls we go. Glenn in Bedford View. That's east of Joburg. Right, Glenn, hi.
Hi, Ashraf, my friend. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good talking to you, Glenn. Go for it. What's your point?
Ashraf, I think our defense force is bleeding to death, and I think it's time our commander-in-chief calls a defense summit, not an investment summit this time around, but a defense summit. Call all the former generals, everyone who has interest in the army, and he must take advice from them, because at the moment, the president seems not to know what to do. And our army is busy dying in the DRC, and that's very unnecessary. That's my contribution for today, my friend.
Well, I'll tell you what, you certainly got us thinking. Thank you for that. I'll tell you what, here's an additional point. And really, I say this as someone who loves his country. I love South Africa, okay? Of 20, let's say 20 indices, what's working? So the Defence Force is not working. Now we know that. The rugby team is working, right? So go through it. What's working and what's not working in South Africa. Salo in Mokopane, hi. Salo, hi. Yeah, maybe we just...
Yes.
Yeah, we got you on the line. Go for it, Salo.
Okay, thanks for taking my call. Ashraf, we are speaking as if the general is speaking something that we do not know at all. And it is annoying, to say the least. Radio callers of this show, we've been talking about these things. I mean, it is not an opinion. Some people are saying this is an opinion about the general. He was not supposed to say, talk about this issue in the defense force because it is not his job and so forth. Ashraf, it is frustrating again when we as a listeners and pinpoint certain problems in government and so forth, and then it is not taken seriously until someone who works in there speak about the issues that they see daily, like us that we see from far, and then we're gonna act as if this is new to us. And
all right, I think you.
Yes, and lastly, the same way as the SABC is not performing well.
Yeah.
The same, because you guys, you don't talk about that because you are not supposed to talk about that. And then in my mind, who is supposed to report about the SABC issue that is not functioning well? There's no money. They are not making money as well. The lifts are not working there, and many, many other things. Who should speak about that? It is not you guys.
Well, a point well made. I think, listen, the problems with the SABC are also well documented. And, there's been huge calls for a complete overhaul of how the SABC runs. I can't say more because I don't know more, okay? We represent, I'm not management. But I take your point. As far as the Defence Force is concerned, I think the difference between you and I commenting versus someone who's a general, it just amplifies it in an official capacity. And I think that the truth is it carries far more weight than you and I saying the same thing. And that's why it's that important. Right, there's even more comment after this.
This is Tulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief.
What have we been able to establish around these videos and the incidents behind them?
We made a call yesterday at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon for these victims to come forward to assist us with the case that we had opened on their behalf and registered. So according to these 3 victims who are friends, they were 5 at the time, and they went to this particular nightclub to go and have fun. A dispute arose between them and the bouncers and the manager. They were then forced to a storeroom of this particular establishment where they were assaulted. They were instructed to insert alcohol bottles into their private parts and forced to also perform sexual acts on themselves.
That's Athlenda Mate, who speaks on behalf of the SAPS.
The Morning Brief. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Right, 47-year-old Abner loves OUTsurance Essential. Why? Well, because it's low-cost insurance made for older cars. That's why. Now, for his 2006 Opel Corsa Utility 1.4, he only pays 253 rands a month. With OUTsurance Essential, accident claims are paid in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. Now, top this up with a motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns as well. And that's even more. Now get saving with OUTsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS CAR to 43187. You got that? CAR 43187. Licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's and information online.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Well, there's another comment about that conversation about Google.
If Google were to be left alone, as per your caller, I guess Google will then have to put journalists on the ground. Thanks, Sibongi here.
Well, point made, point taken, Sibongi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf Matabuche. Ashraf, I don't know, in South Africa, when someone who leads goes and attends to an event, and that is publicized or published on the social media, people respond to it in a negative way. I think we need to understand that they are also human beings and they are interacting with their relatives and the public at large. With regards to what the mayor is saying about the service in Johannesburg, I think that is critical, and he must give it a priority and make sure that things are done and done speedily before May 2026.
There we are, May. Okay, 2026, the local government election. Well, I think it's not just the mayor; it's a national priority for South Africa to get the city of Joburg working. It's not working. The mayor said it's broken. Do I have to say any more than that? William Kuma, go for it.
Okay, Ashraf, we shouldn't sweep some other things under the carpet and pretend that everything is handy-done in South Africa. We've been speaking and talking like mad hornet cats about borders for us as one of the problems. Now that the analyst is speaking openly about our defense force to say it could be described as Mickey Mouse defense force. And it's a point. So that's my word, Ashraf. We are so hurtful with this government to the level that our defense force should be labeled Mickey Mouse defense force because of our useless government. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Do I need to add anything to that? No. Here's one about Parks Tower. Remember that?
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the team. With the inner city of Joburg, Mayor Pakstow was trying to rejuvenate and clean the city of Joburg. For me, he was the only mayor who actually tried to get to the bottom of cleaning the city of Joburg. Unfortunately, he was also removed. And then others, they tried, but they don't have an idea. The city of Joburg needs more intense, more thinking, more planning. And then they must plan sustainable solutions. It's BB here. Thank you.
Okay, I think point made. I don't need to add to that. Here's another.
Mr. Ashraf, good afternoon. It's Dumiso from Waterfall in KZN. Look, I'll have to agree with the general. I think the defense of the country is being undermined. And I try as much as I can to read a lot about South African history, more especially from a military perspective. If you look at the then apartheid government, the South African Defence Force was very capable, even though they were operating under sanctions. So they found a way to manufacture their own weapons via the likes of Denel Dynamics, to the point where they were able to manufacture nuclear weapons under sanctions, bear in mind. That capability is still there. Even though we are living in the new dispensation, what's happening is these capabilities are being undermined by the government, and really it's something to think about. It's not that we can't, it's because people don't want to do what they're supposed to do. Finish.
Well, there you are. I mean, you're right about the point that, if you've got a team of, say, 11 players, let's say a football team, do you play with 7 players or do you play with all 11 players? I mean, just work that out. Klabirwa, let's get your thoughts. Hello.
Yes, thank you, Ashraf.
Thanks for calling in, man. Yeah, go for it.
Yes, I'd like to comment on the infrastructure, especially in our country.
Please do.
More particularly in Joburg.
Right.
My view is that the primary reason for this delivery structure is because elections in South Africa comes every 2 to 3 years. So the politicians, every time when they have to develop things, they always look for the next election, which becomes difficult, of course, if you are a politician to develop. You always wanted to please your voters. So my suggestion will be that why can't we scrap the community election? What do they call it?
Local council. Local,
yes. Why can't we scrap it and have one single election? Why they're going to have full 5 years?
No, but it's also 5 years. What I'm saying, you have a national election, which is 5 years, and a local election, which is also 5 years. So it's not like they're all in power for 1 year or 2 years. No.
Yeah, that is politically correct. But it's incorrect in this sense that we just went for elections last year. And we are going for the next elections in 2026, which is primarily 3 years. So what I'm saying that the politicians look for that space, that we are going for the next election. So we cannot do something that is concrete, that's going to last us forever, especially when it comes to infrastructure.
Okay.
That is why we are having many things in South Africa that they are left because they look for the next election.
Okay, I got
it's
that.
Always about the next
all right. Klabirwa, you made your point. Interesting one. Now, I think, to be fair, national elections are national, for parliament, for national government. You can't do away with local elections because that means we don't have any say in our local suburbs, our townships, our communities. And they're not the same person. We must have that. Both of them last 5 years. They're not just 1 or 2 years. Yes, there's more comments. We have no reception in Kapshak Huop, Mpumalanga. Well, let's see. I don't know what the problem is. I'll alert the technical teams there. Ashraf, good on the army officer. Everything the ANC touches has become a Mickey Mouse operation. We must stop beating about the bush and reveal the facts. It's time now, from Tim in KZN. And then Tim saying the ANC is working hard at destroying the country. I'm not too sure whether that's the plan. The fact that many things are breaking is true, but whether that's the intention, I don't necessarily think so. There's more comments about the SANDF.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Lucky from Paarl in the Western Cape. Listening to both gentlemen, the clip you played and the interview you just said, it's sobering to hear that people speak the truth, and it's up to the politicians to not listen to what has been said and deal with it, and without having to be angry about it, just deal with it or engage the person and then find a common grounds for the betterment of our country. Thank you.
Okay, got that here. Let me squeeze another one very quickly.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The SANDF general is spot on, and Bodakota quick to condemn his utterances, something which they cannot do with their comrades, ANC comrades, who destroyed this country. I am anonymous in Blackstop.
Okay, here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf is Tapero from the Northwest. Ashraf, I think these politicians, especially Dakota, he's never been for army, he's never went for cadet services, he know nothing about the army. So these guys must stop to undermine and to spread lies about the army. Because what I've heard from the army, they're in fact enough with these things of this government. If these guys come back from where they are and come and take decision to take over the government, I'm going to support them.
Okay, there we are. The last voice note is about the mayor of the city of Joburg.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Agimatebula. Mr. Ashraf, listening to Tate Dademura, sometimes I feel like a mayor is just a mayor just to get paid. Because each and every mayor come and say, we'll remove hijacked building, we'll remove this and that. In Johannesburg, as a mayor, he knows that a lot of robots are not working every day. Even we don't have load shedding. The robots are not working. But the crime itself, you can't even have a phone call inside CBD. This is like material.
Enough said. That's the National Pulse. You've just told us what you feel and what your pulse tells you. I much appreciate it. We'll do it all again tomorrow, 3 to 6. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Here's Greg Hose.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Gauteng Premier to deliver his SOPA and the UN chief speaks out against dictatorships. Good evening. The stage has been set in Pretoria for Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's State of the Province address shortly. He is expected to outline his government's plans to deal with the unemployment rate in the province, which stands at 34%. He's also expected to speak on the provincial government's efforts to deal with crime and poor service delivery. The ACDP is hoping the Premier will table how he will deal with the housing challenge.